Sarah Belknap and Joseph Belknap are Chicago-based interdisciplinary artists and educators who make art that looks at outer space, conspiracy theories, and physics. Working as a team since 2008, they have exhibited their art in artist-run exhibition spaces in Brooklyn, Detroit, Minneapolis, Kansas City, St. Louis, and Springfield, Illinois. In addition, they have presented performances at institutions throughout Chicago, including the Chicago Cultural Center, Hyde Park Art Center, Links Hall, and the Museum of Contemporary Art, MCA Chicago. Their work has been shown in group exhibitions at the San Francisco Art Institute Galleries, the Columbus Museum of Art in Ohio, and the Arts Club of Chicago, the Chicago Artists Coalition, and Western Exhibitions in Chicago. Their work has been featured in solo shows at the Arts Club of Chicago and MCA Chicago, and was recently included in the book Weather as Medium Toward a Meteorological Art by Janine Randerson. I need to get my hands on a copy of that book. That sounds great. And then Rebecca Parker is the Senior Director of Academic Programs at Expo School of Art and Artist Residency, where she has worked for the last 7 years in numerous roles. Education, and in particular, alternative spaces of learning, have always inspired her. At Expo, she has worked closely with faculty, visiting artists, artists in residence, and students to create programming and pedagogy that connects artists to the landscape as a site for experimentation and community. She is particularly interested in examining how learning happens, how trust, vulnerability, and risk-taking play a part in expanded personal growth. Parker has worked in arts administration and education for the past 15 years in a number of different capacities, including working for state and local arts councils, as well as teaching and working within universities. She received her Master of Fine Arts from the University of Connecticut and continues to work as a practicing artist. So thank you all for being here today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca and Sarah and Joseph to talk about Toast and also their time at Expo this summer.
Thank you for the introductions. And I guess we have to get to the most important part first, which is everyone's favorite toast. So over my time at Expo, I feel like my perfect toast zone is sourdough, butter, and nutritional yeast. I keep it really, really simple in the toast bar, but been missing it a bunch this year, actually. What about you all?
Yeah, we missed it too, but we were trying to figure it out, and I feel like I hadn't had toast from Expo in a while, but I think I used to really just do butter and some honey and salt on it. And then, but now, yeah, now we just eat toast at home.
I'm very simple, honey, peanut butter, and maybe just a slight buttering of the toast prior to that. But I like the way, I don't know what it is, but it seems like something gets crunchy in there. Like I mean, I'm more of an almond butter person now, but like a peanut butter and a honey, they seem to get crispy together, or like they make the bread crispy. Does anybody else know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like there is some physics, there's some magic happening there, but I don't know what it is.
I'm gonna have to say, like, your at-home toast that you were talking about sounded pretty spectacular, if you don't mind sharing.
Oh, yes. It's just like a good, like, you have to get good bread, like not like the, like, you know, Wonder Bread is bad, but don't get like regular sandwich bread. Get like a really good piece of bread and toast it, put almond butter, avocado, and then a slice of bacon. And it is so good. It's so good. It's like one of our absolute favorite things in the world.
Yeah.
Well, when the toast bar comes back, we may have to add that toast recipe into the.
It's so good.
Well, thanks for talking to me today. And I feel like this is great because we are always talking about Expo and pedagogy and teaching and learning there, and what a special place it is to have that experience. And you know, one of the things that when I was thinking about talking with you all is just thinking a lot about like the cyclical nature of Expo, and, you know, a lot of folks may first come there as a student or, you know, as a resident or as a fellow, and then may participate in it in many different ways. And I find that that's something that's sort of like a unique aspect of Expo. One of my favorite things was when I first met Jim Dignan, he was like, I want to come back to Expo. I was like, how long has it been since you've been there? And he was like, I came as a student 30 years ago. And I was like, yeah, let's like have you back as a visiting artist. And it's just like that kind of experience with the place of like wanting to come back to it is something that I find is like resonates with folks. So I want to just like talk to you all about like what was your first entryway into Expo, like how had you been thinking about it, and then like how that's progressed into teaching.
Our first time we ever went was, we were actually both in grad school. It was our 1 year that we were both in school at the same time, and we applied to do a kind of like, it was like grad projects, I think it was called, but it was a winter class. And it was 2 weeks, and we'd have one visiting artist 1 week and one the next week, but it was basically just studio time for us. And we went there, and it was just always below freezing and snowed every single day. And it was just magical. Like, and we fell so in love with that place.
I did work study, and my job was to shovel snow. So it snowed every single day.
Joseph knows the paths and all the shortcuts to every single, because he was the one that had to do all the paths. And so even when I was like lost the first time we went there as our like residents, I had no idea where I was going, and he could just like get anywhere because he had shoveled every single day, like twice a day.
Yeah, and I think that was a really nice entryway into kind of also working with John Rossi and kind of being, I don't know, I thought that was a really nice aspect of being like a work fellow, like while I was there. But it also was a lot of physical exertion, which like I think was really healthy for me too, the exercise component. But after the exercise, then, you know, we did spend most of our time outside in the snow.
Yeah.
And Mikey, who was working in the kitchen at the time, was also making moonshine. And so we would just be out in the woods pretty late at night drinking moonshine. He would just bring us,
yeah, because we were doing all of our art outside. We were, when we went to go, we actually, our car broke down like 3 days before we were supposed to drive to Expo. So we had to rent a car, which was not very big. And we had already promised 2 people. So we were supposed to have this like station wagon that was going to get loaded with stuff. And then we end up with this tiny little rental car. So we couldn't bring anything with us. And we showed up there and we're like, we have no idea what we're going to do now. And so after like a few days of just kind of like trying to think of how we could be making without like any materials, we were able to borrow a bunch of sprinklers, and we ran hoses out of the studio and froze a section of the forest. So we were like always outside because we had to like be moving the sprinklers and like kind of tend to things and try to like
figure out what we were doing.
Yeah. Sorry, Rebecca.
No, I love that DIY nature of it. It's just like, you know, I think that happens so often when, you know, artists are coming to Expo and they have a certain plan, and then it's like, oh, wait, something happened, or like the plan gets thrown out the window as soon as they meet other people, or being able to like work in the landscape and respond is really cool.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts, because you have to like learn how to be scrappy, because you can bring some stuff, but you'll always forget something or not be able to find something that you need, or don't want to drive like way into town to go get it. And so you just kind of work with what you have. And I think that's a really important way to work, because we don't always have like access. And after kind of doing that and then doing the artist residency at Expo, I think we did it maybe 2 years later, 2 years after we were students, the kind of same thing. But now Joseph and I go on our own little artist residencies where we just go on road trips, and we can't bring a lot. We have to bring camping stuff, so we can't bring like a lot of art stuff, but we still are making in kind of like a similar way.
Yeah, absolutely. So how, like after you participated in the grad projects and then in the residency, how did you start to think about this class and developing like the idea for Ghost in the Machine?
I think there was like a pretty expansive amount of time. Like after we had done the residency, at this point, like we were out of grad school and we were kind of like doing a lot of residencies and just kind of like, it led us into our own small design business, which we ran for about 5 or 6 years. That really led us into thinking like, oh, we want to get back more into the social and the thinking. You know, we were just kind of like designing and like, you guys have to be doing that like, you know, repeatedly during a year.
Right.
And so kind of got us back into like, well, let's get into like teaching.
Well, yeah, we were teaching like our normal kind of like during the school year. I think we were really scared to apply to teach at Expo because we were like really nervous because we wanted to do it so bad, but we were really nervous to like actually apply, and we kept writing possible classes down, but never ended up doing it. And then Mike Andrews and Danny Giles, we saw them at school multiple times, and they were just like, why aren't you doing this? Like, why aren't you like, just fill it out and submit something. Like, we want you to teach a class here. And we were like, okay, we'll do it. And so they kind of like, yeah, they pushed us because I think we were both just, we were both a little nervous because we really wanted to do it. And we were worried that we were going to get like rejected.
Well, and yeah, I think it'd be really fun to look at like all of for so many different faculty, like teaching at Expo opens up so many like possibilities that like are different than teaching at, you know, other types of institutions and things like that. And so it would just be, I think, really amazing to put together like a list of all the hypothetical classes that faculty thought for one reason or another just would not work, or like maybe their partner told them that's impossible, they'll never go for it. And like, we
probably have like 20 classes that we started writing for and like trying to think of like what to make. But the Ghost in the Machine is kind of like, it really, really, really is heavily part of our own practice. And over like the many years, we've collected a lot of different kinds of like devices, like cameras or just things to be able to like capture how to look or how to see things in like a different way, like with like that maybe our human eye can't kind of like quite see. And so it was sort of like kind of stemming from like a lot of work that we do dealing with like science and physics and kind of like looking at there's all these satellites right now that are kind of going around our sun. And what they do is they're just like monitoring to like look at sunspots and to kind of just to figure out what because the sun is still such a mystery to us. And so we can go on our phone right now and we can look at an image from the sun that was taken 1 minute ago. And there's maybe at this point, I think there's something like 20 different ways to look at it. And they're just different filters. None of them are ways that our own eye can see them. And so I think that like, it was just something for us to constantly be thinking like, we're looking at something, we can see this thing, but this isn't actually how it looks with our eyes, but what we're looking at, this like kind of this image or this through this filter, it actually does exist. We just don't have the capabilities as humans to see. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I just was thinking just so much about like those acts of observation, and then also that kind of determining whether or not like what is like the real thing or the fake thing, right? Based on like this kind of human bias, this human bias towards our own evolved apparatus, which encounters the smallest amount of electromagnetic radiation, but then there's all these other ways, right? Beyond even the optical, to think about like acts of observation or kind of, you know, inheriting knowledge in and through the body in different ways than just the eye. So I think like, you know, we're reading a book right now by Rebecca Solnit that's talking all about like Muybridge and about this idea of the annihilation of time through speed, through the railway, through photography, things like that. Like it wasn't until, you know, that we saw a 500th of a second to know certain types of things. And you know, I think Ghost in the Machine also like, it's just so multifaceted because it's like once you start talking about one thing, it just kind of like tendrils into another thing. And those sorts of conversations just really are and so numerous in nature, all related to basically that one of the things in Ghost in the Machine is it's kind of like, you know, mind-body dualism, you know, and kind of, so we kind of play around with those sorts of ideas, which, you know, then outward stem, you know, it just kind of turns into mouth garbage, like what I'm saying. It's like, I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, because it's just so many possibilities.
No, I mean, I like, one of the things I always enjoy in walking into your classroom is it's like an explosion of ideas and things and objects, and it's like a laboratory, you know. There's microscopes, and there's like recording devices, and there's the darkroom that you all have made that we don't have, you know, and just like the amount of different things that you can play with. And the play is like such an important part of it too, you know, and introducing artists to like new ways of working, and both like simple and complex, you know. Like I love that you are setting up dark rooms, and you're also like working with pinhole cameras, and you're also, you know, working with drones, and, you know, just like so many different ways that you're looking at like recording experience and space and time at Expo, because I think it's all very unique to the space. But one of the other things that I wanted to ask you about is, you know, what, now that you've taught several different times, like what really excites you about teaching at Expo, and do students interact differently at Expo than other places that you teach? You know, like what's that experience like for you in terms of teaching?
I mean, like, I know I've said it to you a million times, like Joseph and I love teaching intensives. It's our favorite thing. We still, like, the first classes that we ever taught were intensives, and going into the kind of like a typical academic school year was really difficult for us, like having this like once a week that we get to be together. We really like it every day because we just form a bond with the students, and like the students form bonds with each other so quickly, and so kind of trust happens, and you're not just trying to like focus on community, it just exists, like you don't have to push it. And then it means we can just be able to play together. And that's the thing, like every time we get ready to go to Expo, we try to see how much stuff we can cram into our car and bring, so that people can just play with whatever they want, try stuff, touch things. Yeah, like I know you kind of mentioned, like it feels like a laboratory. Like we teach a lot of science. We don't even really teach a lot of, like we don't teach it that much, but it's sort of like making people excited, because we know that like the 2 weeks end so fast. When you're doing an intensive, it kind of is like a whirlwind. But if people get really, really excited about a process or a material or an idea, even if they've only gotten like a little tiny bit of it during that 2 weeks, that it's something that they can take with them when they finish, that they hopefully will kind of continue with that material, or at least continue with that idea of play, or have some things to kind of go home and research and like learn more about. And so that's kind of, for me, like, it's just something like, I feel like whenever I'm at Expo, I'm just really relaxed. I'm just running around like all the time, but there's something like really like, yeah, kind of calming about being, just being in the woods and just making, and like getting to make alongside other artists and see all the crazy things that they make. Do you want to? No.
Well, I have some images that I want to show of, I think the first ones that we'll look at are from your class in 2018, and sort of just, if you all don't mind sharing some of what that was. So let me see if I can share my screen. And so this was the first year, I believe, that you all taught this class. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe give us some insight into what what you all were up to.
Yeah. Well, so the image on the left, Joseph and I think we want to do this again, but we didn't do it this year, and I'm slightly regretting it. But our first year, we thought, oh, we will get this little dashboard camera and we'll attach it to a bunch of balloons and do this whole thing with the class. And so we like got a tank of helium and ordered all those Mylar balloons. And we went out with the students and then promptly lost the micro SD card in the field. And then finally, like problem solve that, but ran out of helium. We did not have nearly enough helium to lift this tiny little camera. And so it took like another like week or so to finally get the little thing going. And then these were leftover balloons that we went and did like a beach day. So then yeah, this like utter failure of a thing we were trying to do with the class that was really fun, even if it didn't work at all. Just kind of just turned into these balloons being used by everybody. But we went to the clay beach. I always forget what the name of that beach is, but the student Ryan, who's standing kind of, it looks like there's a table with a tablecloth, was doing this performance, being kind of coated in that clay on that beach. And so, yeah, we kind of did a little class field trip there.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, you know, each year at Expo is that we don't change the curriculum too much, because it's more about like setting up possibilities than it is about determining like a pathway for the class to exactly take. And so, you know, it works well as Sarah and I have taught together, you know, for a number of years and worked together, is that we're kind of always in communication with one another related to work, to teaching, to a class. And so that gives us a lot of like built-in structure for us to talk and kind of collaborate with one another to allow the class to really be defined by how the students are interacting with one another, how they're imagining things together, how maybe certain things that we've kind of set up for them trigger them into new pathways of making or possibilities. And so, yeah, I think like, you know, when we first started this class, we had this sort of plan, and then it kind of all fell apart. And that taught us a lot about like how we wanted to continue to work with this class, as far as, you know, not creating too many overarching exact things that we would have everybody doing together, or like, you know, kind of like class individual projects, but to maybe just set up instances where we're interacting with one another in different ways that, yeah, so I don't know, this just kind of like led into a lot of, this year specifically had so much collaborative making. Mm-hmm. And that was really exciting for us to see just how much collaborative making, and it led us into a big conversation around like, if we're all making together, who becomes the kind of owner, or the kind of, you know, how do we go about using this material that, you know, maybe you didn't have, you know, your own sole proprietary kind of intellectual property over, like, and yeah, it led us into this big code of ethics that you're seeing on the screen now, which was this really wonderful conversation.
Yeah, the previous image are all the students, well, you see some students in the boat. That was when we finally got the little drone camera working, and the students went out on the boats and shot a ton of, we've got our cat bothering us, shot a ton of footage. And they all kind of, it happened really organically, and a couple of them ended up getting in the water, and they were kind of performing, and then all the students got really into the footage. It was very dizzying because the wind was like whipping the balloons around. So the images, it's like, yeah, it's kind of like nausea inducing, but they all were trying to figure out, like, we're starting to make all this work together. They were all like, yeah, just shooting work and then keeping it all on one flash drive that anybody had access to. And so that kind of did turn into a discussion. A student brought up like, well, how do we, like, who gets credit for this? And so we decided to kind of start to have a conversation. And so the students themselves, like, we talked about maybe they should do some sort of code of ethics, like how do they use their work together? And so the students kind of started to make like a big, just on like brown paper, started to write down different ideas that they had about how they feel like they can use each other's work, or how they could use the work, and if they were using it, how to credit each other, and acknowledge each other, and not just think of it as this kind of like individual kind of like artist genius, but that it was really this kind of collaborative effort to make most of the work that got made in that class. And so then one of our students, Libby, who has amazing handwriting, as you can see, wrote out their kind of final code of ethics together and signed it. And this lived on our door in the classroom for the rest of the time.
Yeah, and I think that like this sort of conversation just leads to like a larger thing that I think about is like the trust and vulnerability that the space of Expo opens up, you know, and I think it is everybody living and learning and working together, and everybody sort of like agreeing to like, we're going to experiment and test these things out, and we're going to like do that through success and failure, you know, that we're just going to like support each other in that way. And as you all set up for classes, you know, like one of the things that I've noticed is just like your dedication in teaching to students, and just the level in which you participate in the community all the time. Whether that's like, I know in many years you like have a walkie-talkie system in the classroom so that people can contact you all the time. And yeah, can you just speak to like how you all collaboratively think about that as faculty together, and like how you came to that level of just like engagement with the community and classroom?
Well, I mean, we figure we're like lucky to be at Expo for 2 weeks every year. And like, if we get to be there, like we're all in. Like that's kind of a huge part of it for us, is that we're there, we're living there. We're not coming home to like have to make our own meals and take care of things and come home to all these responsibilities, that we get to be a part of this space. And like, honestly, like, again, that's the reason why we love teaching here so much, is that we get to be present with the students and the staff and the other faculty, and get to engage and get to have fun together, and get to like, yeah, we tell everybody, like, we just don't really turn off during those 2 weeks. Especially Joseph, because he does telescope way too many times and does not go to sleep sometimes.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's also just about like, you know, how do you build that trust? How do you build that like relationship? And, you know, I think it's through presence. And so like in I don't know, one way that I think about my life is like, what's a rare moment versus, you know, a moment, a reoccurring moment, or things like that. And the more I think about it, it's like, well, every moment is a rare moment, you know, and an elusive one at that. And so yeah, it's just like, I think, you know, Sarah and I, again, as Sarah was mentioning earlier about that idea of intensive teaching versus, we just have a hard time with the model of the normal teaching year. And honestly, we're not like capitalist, right? And so there's this way that like once you get over that little bit of the dune at the end of Rupert Way, like, you know, my mind changes, I change, my expectations change, my social engagement, you know, and I think, and it's like, you know, I try to take that energy and that presence and build that other places as well, like in our own kind of art commune home. You know, we actually kind of had a residency. We were just away for 2 weeks, and we actually had a former student from a class here using our studio and taking care of our kiddies. And so it's, you know, how do you build and extend that community outward from well, I think it also comes from like, you know, like Sarah, we're all in. It's like, and I, you know, it's just trying to engage every moment like that. And, you know, I mean, you only get so many students in your life. I recognize somebody on that screen. What's up, Marissa? But like, you know, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to teach an infinite number of classes at Expo. I'm not going to meet an infinite number of students. There is a finite number to each one of these things. There's actually a website you can go to that will tell you how many sunny days that you will be outside for the rest of your life. It's a really cool website. I don't even know what it is,
so
but it kind of calculates these things, and it's like, yeah, like, oh, these are rare moments, you know, and these engagements are so rare and hard to come by, and especially, you know, as you know, even functioning within certain systems still, like Expo does set itself aside in this way of allowing for us to also engage outside of that like strict timeline of a class, and like, when does class start and when does class end? our final day when everybody was leaving campus, the students were leaving campus, we actually had 2 students come over and start knocking on our door before we were awake. And I was like, give us 10 minutes. And so we ended up spending 4 more hours outside just drinking tea and sitting by a little fire and just talking about books and sharing more ideas. And it was like, yeah, the class doesn't end. Like the class, you know, that's this kind of idea of, yeah, even like telescoping at night or going on a walk through the woods at night. And these are all moments in which we build knowledge and experiences together. So I always just appreciate that Oxbow also kind of, yeah, has that like, that ability to not just be, you know, like, here's where you turn on and here's where you turn off. It's, I don't know, it's, you know, it wears you out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is a space of like, I mean, learning's always happening. And I think it makes it very visible to me that like learning's always happening in life all the time, you know, and it's no matter where you are or what kind of conversations, but definitely like the level of presence and engagement on campus is such like a rewarding thing and exhausting thing all at the same time. But I agree, it is special and knowing that we all have like our own timeline for the time that we spend at Expo is important to recognize. One of the things, you know, that we did a little differently this year, well, we did a lot of things differently, but, you know, over the years, you know, I've really been paying attention to like how people are learning at Expo. And there were definitely these like sweet spots and these moments where sometimes in the winter session when we just had such a fewer number of students on campus that classes would start to talk to one another in a different way than in the summer. And then I started like softly playing with program that next year to sort of align some faculty who I thought were having like conversations that were similar across the same weeks. And I think, you know, that was a time where you all and Jeremy Bolin were like in class, and I think it was 2019 together. And so, and there were moments during that summer where I didn't know which students were in which class anymore, you know, that you all were like starting to do this like interdisciplinary thing, this multidisciplinary thing. And then as we had the opportunity to sort of really shift what programming looked like this year, and with the smaller number of students on campus, we were able to play with that new like 3-week model of students taking multiple classes and thinking about like larger concepts and aligning conceptual concerns both with faculty and VAs across the weeks. And it resulted in some really interesting things happening. And just wanted to like talk to you about it and experiencing it both in like a more traditional setting in this more interdisciplinary mode. What was that like for you all? How did it resonate with the sort of laboratory experimentation that you're already doing in your class?
I mean, I can definitely throw in there. You know, and I think as you were kind of saying these things, Rebecca, I was kind of like having this other thought too about both the faculty, but, you know, even that line in the kind of space of being at Expo. Because, yeah, I mean, we have like definitely vibed with Bolin, and we loved working out on these different things. And we like, in that way, you know, are always talking, and especially like even this year we were able to kind of talk about like the students that we were sharing and kind of devise again like responsive kind of ways of like listening to each other, hearing each other, thinking about what each other is saying, and then how do we maybe build some things that we're going to also participate in. I think, you know, as I was even thinking about the last question, I was thinking about so much of our time there is also making ourselves and engaging. And I think like, as we're hanging out with other faculty is like, you know, we're talking about like our own works, and we're talking about our own ideas, and like, it all just becomes like this kind of clay that we can play with. But I was thinking so much about like, you know, the Expo experience too is how enriched, I think like, the staff positions are in interacting as well, and in interacting with Bobby. Hi, Bobby. I know you're out there. Or you were out there. But like working with Devin and even working with Yashu, like in Glass this time, and you're just kind of going between all of these places around campus. So it's like, it's not just even the faculty there, it's the entire community that's kind of turned on and engaged, and working with Mac on the radio, or kind of like screening films, or whatever you're doing. All of these things are kind of like that enriched space. So yeah, I mean, I think in 2019, we didn't do as much faculty to faculty, or 2018, our very first year. We didn't do as much. There was a little bit of
a party class though, and we there was a class that was like designed, it was on parties. So they were like learning about like kind of parties through like anthropology, and then also kind of making parties. But like part of us with our class was that we were sort of going and like helping like document the work, because like we'd have all the like night vision cameras, and so we were kind of like, it wasn't like a full on, but it was sort of like, they were always calling us the spy class.
Yeah, I definitely, I appreciate you saying that too, Bobby, because I think, just even in the early conversations about what this 3-week model might look like, just recognizing like our staff brings so much. They're all artists too, and they bring so much to the community, and sort of having them involved early on in the conversations with you all, to think about possibilities, I think helped do some really interesting things, that I'm going to jump to things like this. So, I think this was a screening that we had of like the cosmos, and then we also listened as a group to the Golden Record that evening, while also looking at the stars, which you all have done before, and planets, and to me, these kind of moments on campus, where it is like you all, the visiting artists, the students, the staff, all coming together to like make these really magical moments, like staying up till 3 a.m. and people falling asleep on the meadow and waking back up to like see if the planets are aligning and what they can see. Like these are things that I think from a learning standpoint, these will stay with people for a long time. They will go back to those moments. And I was taking a pedagogy class this last spring, and one of the things that we were talking about in that class was that, as a teacher, one of the most important things that you can do is get people excited about learning. That like the thing that you're teaching is important, but that idea of being excited about learning, that's what keeps people engaged learners. And so, I think a lot about these types of experiences happening.
Yeah. I did want to make one correction on what you were saying. And it was, we were up till 5:30.
Oh yes, sorry.
Yes.
It's important. Maybe I went to bed at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. Actually.
I think you went to bed even later. I think I went to bed at 5:30. I think you went to bed at like 6:30.
Yeah, I mean, the sun was, we were battling, the moon was just setting and the sun was just coming up, and we were trying to get that sweet spot between the two.
Yeah. I usually try to go to bed to make sure one of us can maybe get to where we need to be on time the next day. But it turned out that every single student from our class stayed up. So the next day they were all like, can we sleep? And we're like, please go sleep.
Yeah.
Like,
in those moments, people need sleep too.
Yeah, it's important. It's important.
Yeah. And I sort of had this as one of our last photos, but yeah, I really appreciate like how you're making art alongside folks in the classroom, and using that space as experimentation too. And one of the other things that we haven't talked about yet, but I'm really interested in how you inspire students at Expo to sort of like really tune into what they want to make. Like I'm thinking about like the photo project that Jonas did, and how he ended up taking photos of everyone in the community over that period of time. Like, how did things like that come to fruition? Also, like Pudding Stone and the band that sort of came together on campus this year. And then also, how do those things like live outside of Expo? Because I know you are in such contact with students even after the experience there. And yeah.
Well, I'll start with like the making. Like, I mean, well, I guess all of it is making. When we're in the classroom, like, I mean, honestly, one of the things that I always love the most is having, as we talked about, like our classroom is very much about play, and so we teach things, but then also let people experiment and try, and rather than kind of have like this like set goal or this exact plan for how the class is going to go, we're just very kind of flexible and present. But there's also time when like maybe everybody's gone and they're all like shooting images somewhere, or there's too many people in the dark room. And I think it's really important for us to also be making it a lot, like a big part of teaching for us is we are practicing artists, and a big thing that I like doing is seeing what other people make, because it gives me ideas. And so the same thing, like if I'm making something, a student might get into something, or like notice that I'm doing a certain type of technique and want to do it, or just the act of all of us, like the image with the water fountain that's got all the pieces, that's like a collection of multiple, like it's our work, but it's students' work. And we're like, let's hang up stuff, let's look at things together, let's have them kind of start to surround us. And the same thing that like when we were working with Jonas is he just got so into the darkroom, like more like really wanted to learn technically how to take images with a manual camera, how to print, and was so interested in those technical aspects, and started to take portraits. But then it was sort of just like a joking thing, I think, that Joseph just said, was like a challenge, like take a photo of every single person at Expo. Like, can you do this? Could you make that happen? And so I think a lot of it is just sort of like those, like a lot of the projects kind of happen when students do just kind of go into it without a clear, like, this is exactly what I'm going to make, or like a completely clear plan, which oftentimes like I find is really boring from my own practice, is I don't need to know what it is and before it's made. And so the way that you kind of start with, like, especially a new material, is you just start and you make something and it's bad, and you kind of keep going and it'll get better and better, and you'll learn more about it. And so a lot of kind of the projects that kind of come out of the class, like ours and the students, are just from them kind of testing something and like skeptically testing something maybe, and then it turning into some sort of magic for them. And then I don't know, Joseph just started asking the students if they want to be in a band.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was like, I really want to be on WXBO, and I've never played like live music, and I just thought, well, this is a great opportunity.
Yeah. And Mila was making some sound pieces during the first week class and was sharing them with me and Joseph, and they were really good. And Joseph's like, Mila, do you want to be in a band? And then more students just started to pop in.
Yeah, but I think it's just that space of kind of where you position yourself in like making work, and like what is the work. And I guess for me, like making work is about thinking, and it is a way that you actually think and build knowledge. And so, like, as Sarah was mentioning, Jonas got so into that technical thing, but wasn't like, oh, here's this like concept, or like needing a concept to like drive making. Is that making can build a concept, making can reveal like the undertones that are kind of driving you in the first place, and you kind of can create a more reflexive kind of space. And you know, I think that's that space of just allowing yourself to not worry necessarily about like what a final piece will be, or how you will be kind of, how will this entire experience be evaluated based on a product that you had created, or like an image or a thing like that, but rather kind of like what kind of experiences can you kind of build while you're here. this kind of all goes into like pedagogy and things like for us, like even like, you know, the idea of like the work sample, like the sample as work, or the process as work. And I think that kind of allows for you to not worry that like no one judged us for, we really hadn't practiced, and then we spent 1 hour live on the radio kind of figuring ourselves out as a band. I mean, we did have really good names to start. I'm Solarian Dolomite, if anybody was wondering what my band name is. But also that idea of like, you know, keeping doors open. And so, you know, even Pudding Stone is still like an open kind of thing that, I don't know, I think everybody's really excited to continue this thing. And even inside of the band now, we're talking about like, how do we work through these power dynamics of like, I was the teacher, now I'm no longer the teacher, I'm a bandmate, you know, and like, how do we have conversations, and how do we like build from that experience into new experiences. And we're signed with Emo Records, and we will be releasing cassettes soon, and we will be also showing, we will be playing a show. I'm just going to plug the show. We do have a show coming up. Devin is doing Terrain Biennial, and we'll be presenting work here, and we're going to be kind of having, we'll pay attention for dates. It's all on our website.
It's not
which
on
doesn't
a website.
exist
Yeah,
yet.
it's nowhere.
Pudding Stone is in progress.
It's here right now.
Yeah, shameless plugging.
Yeah.
No, but I love that. I love that these things continue on, and have, you know, sometimes it's hard to explain how experience at Expo, how those experiences live on. And I think about that in terms of learning too. You know, it's like sometimes we actually haven't learned the thing until we like leave the, you know, like that we reflect upon the process or the things that have happened, and that learning doesn't often take place in the moment, but like weeks after, months after, years after, you know, there's definitely conversations that I've had in that space that have informed me like long after being there. So, but maybe that's a good place. I know we're sort of close to time to open things up, and if there's any questions or.
Bye, Bobby.
Anyone does have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or chime in. Otherwise, we will wrap up. That was such a wonderful conversation, Sarah and Joseph and Rebecca. Thank you all so much for doing this today. It's such a treat to hear you both talk about teaching at Expo, almost as much as it is to watch you teach at Expo, and all of the energy and experimentation and materials that you bring. And I know that we all can't wait until you're back again, hopefully soon.
I know, we cannot wait.
And then,
we're excited to be back too, and do some collaboration with Jurassic.
yes,
So
and on that note, Jurassic, we'll be doing our next Toast Talk in September. I believe it's on September 13th. Jurassic and Emery will be in conversation. Emery is one of our chefs at Expo this summer, and has also done a lot of work as a food stylist prior to their time here at Expo. And so Jurassic and Emery will be talking about all things food and cooking and community, and what that looks like here at Expo. So that talk will be really great as well.
Thank you, Sarah and Joseph.
Thank you so much. It was great to see you both.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Molly.